Bom dia para quem é de bom dia, boa noite para quem é da boa noite, good morning for the good morning people, and good night for the good night people, porque hoje nós vamos falar em inglês, que a gente está com um convidado pica das galáxias, eu estou até tremendo de nervoso. Só que antes, para vocês entenderem isso, vocês precisam vir aqui e ligar, colocar assim, subtitles e depois change to português, para vocês lerem o que a gente está falando. And now I will speak in English. You are now in the Mayhem project, and we will introduce you to the Brazilian audience, a guy who is a great author. But first, I have to say I'm not alone anymore. With me, Barbara Knox from the Ecclesia Babylon. Welcome to the show, Barbara. Yeah, she's there, of course.
Hello everyone, 93. So 93. Today we have a lot to discuss and a lot of different topics that will interest Belamites and blow everybody's minds, I'm sure of it.
And from the Sources Mirror, Jesse Puga.
Hello guys, I'm so excited about this interview. It's nice to be here with you today.
Jessica, please introduce our guests to the audience.
Sure. So Mogg Morgan is a former member of the OTO and a founder of the Oxford Golden Dawn Occult Society and a zone holder of East-West Tantric Order of Amokos. And he has published several books and articles. And Barbara was even telling us that some of his books are available on Amazon Brazil, and we can get them from Kindle or ebook, and some of them with Kindle Unlimited. So it's a very nice tip. If you guys want to know a little bit more about our guests, you can go to Amazon and look for some books.
Well, Mark, welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm very happy to be here, and I'm very well, if that's okay.
Well, the first question that we always ask our guests is, how did you get here? Because here in Brazil, we have a most Catholic country, and all the stories start this. When I was a boy, I went to the church, and then the priest, we have communicate with the priesthood and things like that, and go to the church on Sundays. And now 40 years later, I'm the leader of a satanic cult and magic doer and telemite and everything, and it's mostly like that. But how was your journey?
Well, I don't want to go into that too much, but yeah, I think most people who are into magic have probably got a religious side to them, really. So certainly, it's true. When I was young, I was into the church and all the rest, especially the evangelical church, because it's so. I don't like the ideas of it, but I found it very ecstatic and emotional, and I kind of like that. So I did sort of kind of do quite a lot of that sort of stuff. I think I'm probably always a little bit mystical, a bit sort of visionary, and probably a sucker for any religion, really. But I didn't stick with that for very long. But it's certainly, I think that's going to be a common theme. I think a lot of magicians have come through that route, really, one way or another. But pretty soon, I don't know, I think it was just by accident. I actually was more interested in politics. Far left revolutionary politics, to be honest, than I was in religion. But then some guy said, "Oh, you should read this book." Which was Aleister Crowley's biography. He said, "You might like this." I don't know why. He must have seen something about me. But quite an early age, someone introduced me to Crowley, and I think it was. It struck a chord, really. So that was ages ago. I don't know, you don't want my whole biography. You want to know how I got into the Sethian stuff in the first place? I think the Sethian thing, right from the beginning, I was very drawn to the kind of archetype of Seth. I think it calls to certain people, really. I think you have to have a certain personality type. I mean, I kind of thought, well, you know, because people are always saying, well, who is Seth, right? He's this sort of demonic entity. He's the outcast. He's the confuser and all the rest. But I think also you could say he's the queer god of the world and of Egyptian thing. And I was quite into, you know, actually, as well as revolutionary politics, into sort of what you would call now queer politics, sort of sexual politics and all the rest. And he was he was the obvious choice, really. You know, you're looking for some. I think initially it would be like a lot of people. You kind of start with the satanic thing. You know, it's almost like if you're a little bit. It sounds if you're a little bit of an outlaw. These sort of archetypes like Satan, even Crowley. See, Crowley appeals to the sort of sexual outlaw, really. I mean, not that it should be outlaw, but, you know, this is a while ago, and it was kind of, there was a bit of a downer on that type of thing, especially if you were in a church, if you're in an evangelical church, they're always kind of moaning about it, really, and saying you shouldn't be into that. So you kind of, you have these various archetypes that really call to you and think, well, I'm kind of, and Crowley as well. See, Crowley, Aleister Crowley was a sort of sexual outlaw, wasn't he? He's considered in this country, I don't know how it is, as a kind of icon of the gay movement, really, because he kind of had, he was very out, wasn't he? He was, as much as you could be, he was a very out person, and he had this relationship with another man, which was, you know, so in a sense, funny enough, his relationship with Victor Neuburg is a bit like the relationship between Seth and Horus. You know, they play this role, and in this relationship was you know, it's just a love affair, really, but they kind of discover a whole new type of magic, which is the sexual magic thing. I mean, I know this is stuff that existed before, and it existed kind of way in the past and everything, but it kind of gets rediscovered in the Victorian era. And it's funny that these two gay guys, basically, well, two bisexual guys, or whatever you want to call them now, they like each other. They're a little bit abusive, but they kind of create this whole movement, really, of saying, well, you don't need a lot of all this stuff. It's, you know, that sexuality, your sexuality is the thing that's going to set you free in the end. And everybody's telling you to sort of lock it all down, but this is the secret. So all these things together, you know, at a time, you know, I was quite young and everything, it kind of really, it really struck a chord with me. And with Crowley, I mean, as I say, I ended up by just completely coincidence and synchronicity in the Typhonian OTO, which of course is central mystery of the Typhonian OTO is supposed to be the mysteries of Seth. And so I think that's probably how I learned more about Seth, because Seth, funny enough, Seth isn't, the Egyptian god Seth isn't very obvious in Crowley's writings. He's mentioned it a couple of times, but he doesn't really make as much out of it as you would expect, really. You can, looking back, you think, God, how could he have missed it? This is the most interesting piece of magic, right, within Egypt. But even so, it gives you enough hints that there's this hidden mystery. And of course, for some reason or other, you have the version of the OTO that's completely named after the, well, it's called the Typhonian, but really it's saying it's the Egyptian god Seth that they're talking about. And so up till then, you had all these satanic groups, but suddenly you got Kenneth Grant and everything. They have this revelation, and then you have all the people who were in the temple of the Church of Satan, which wasn't really a religious group, I don't think, when it started out. It was more of a kind of crazy countercultural group. But then people within that group sort of had this revelation. It's almost like Seth sort of appears to them and says, don't worry about all that Satan stuff. What you really want is the god Seth. You've got to get into that. And it's almost, I think a lot of people who are Setians, they have this sense that they're being called by this very ancient archetype. It seems to be like them, you know, that in so many ways that I've already mentioned. So this was quite a long time ago, you know, that I had that kind of feeling, and it got me into through Crowley into an interest in Seth, really, and the two, you know, we were saying the two things overlapped. I mean, the first.
Morgan, can I ask you?
Go on, you better let you
What
back
year was
in.
that? What year was that, and how was the scenario in UK at that time, the occult, when you stepped in? This first step, that's the most important to us. It's like how a person stops being a normal person and becomes a magician, and this is a very important thing for our our listeners.
God, I never, you know, I've kind of always been into that in a sense. I hadn't really thought about that question, how do you become a magician? But it's true. But I think what it is that makes you a magician is this, because the other thing about Seth is, in terms of the mythology, he is the archetypal magician. He's actually got this title within Egyptian myth and stuff. I didn't know this at the time. Because, you know, I've gone on this long journey of but he has this title. He's called the Elder Magician, right? Now, there's some dispute about what's meant by that, but I think most people think when they talk about the Elder Magician, i.e. the oldest magician, the first person who created magic, and is this god Seth. And you can't avoid that. There's a possibility it's someone else, but it probably is Seth. One way or another, in terms of the world, in terms of the history of the world, the creation of magic and the moment in which magic comes into the world, in the ancient world, is very much tied up with the mythology of Seth, or possibly with his alter ego, another entity called Apophis. And there's a sort of overlap and a dynamic between them, which is complicated and interesting in its own self. But so essentially, if you're called by an entity like Seth, for whatever reason, you know, you feel as if this is for you, then you're also being told that you've got to be a magician. You've got to wield this particular energy that Seth deals with. So I think, as I say, quite early on, it's a subtle thing. I think it's this call, right? This call to go on this journey, this magical journey, and learn magic. Often it does come from deities like Seth, and it certainly did in my case. And I think it's happened to a lot of people, which is, as I say, is a surprising thing about Crowley, that he didn't sort of to see that. But then in the 1970s, with the groups like the Church of Satan and the Temple of Set and the Typhonian OTO, essentially that's what they're saying. This is the call to magic of a particular sort as well. It's quite significant. And this is he's either going to be a hidden deity for you, or you may as well just let it out. But he's definitely probably the most magical entity within the Egyptian tradition. And that I just felt called to that. It was in the first book. I mean, as I say, we were making all these fanzines and stuff. This is before the internet, in the 1980s. And it's almost like, you probably do this, as people say, oh, what we're going to put in this magazine, you know, we want to have a magazine. Well, so I'll go write something, you know. So what do we want to write about? Oh, like you know, back then it's, oh, well, everybody wants to know about sexual magic, really. That's more interesting than a lot of the other stuff, right? Something about that. So, well, I don't really know very much about it. But I say, well, nobody knows very much about it, really. So you may as well just sort of stick your neck out and all the rest. But anyway, so I ended up writing this little book about it, just sort of analyzing what other people, and part of the book is actually, even back then when I think about it, was channeling the entity Seth as this sort of conversation. have this kind of character who's a bit like I don't know, is it Frankfurter out of the Rocky Horror Picture Show? You know, this sort of which is how I kind of visualize. And he's sort of talking, and you're this kind of Brad who's sort of wandered into this Rocky Horror Picture Show, but actually he's Seth, you know, and he's kind of, you're having this conversation. Oh, yeah, you know, you can. Why do you care about all these things? And I put all this sort of channel conversation in this early book. Really, I mean, I don't know how much of it stands up now, but I you know, it made me think right from the beginning, all the way through all the different books. I should say with the books, when you study magic, you're supposed to write diaries and stuff, but I don't know, you get a bit fed up of doing that after a while, but you should do something. But I think a lot of people, I noticed Pete Carroll, he says in something that in the end, you gather all these notes, but you kind of have to make a book out of it, really. So the books that magicians write are really like their diaries, edited version, I suppose, yes. Where you bring it all. So each book as you write is a sort of your particular step along the way, really. So the sexual magic book was like the first attempt, or the first moment in which I kind of was channeling those ideas. I didn't really know that much about it, to be honest. Little bits and pieces that you pick up. You know how when you start off in magic, you just listen to everybody and think, oh, that sounds pretty clever. I'll make a note of that. But you know, it's fine. But so there's a whole bunch of us doing all this, just doing our thing and practicing magic and trying to learn it, really, because you know, I think there was nobody really that we kind of thought was. See, even in the OTO, they don't really teach you magic. It's a series. They didn't then. They may do now. It's like do this practice initiation or this journey, this thing, you know, obstacle or whatever we call it, a journey, initiation. But they don't really tell you how to go about it. Yeah, Joan Lansbury, a kind of amazing book. I'm looking at the notes of people coming up. Yeah, there's a whole bunch. I will translate the settings around. This is great. We've got, I should say, we've got the Companions of Seth, and there's which is all, you know, I'm a particular type of Sethian, I think, kind of, we'll talk about that later if you like. But there are several different groupings now, loads of them, but they all seem to get on with each other, to be honest. You know, respect, you know, someone's done that and that's whatever. Anyway, I can bring you to the moment. So I got to the point where I got a teacher turned up, right? Not a magical teacher, kind of complete in that case, but he was an Egyptologist. And I said, well, I've heard about this deity Seth, and I'm supposed to be in this order that's supposed to know about it, but they don't know anything really. How do I find out anything about it? And they told me, first thing to do is to go and study the temple of Seti I in Abydos. Yeah, which is a weird thing. All right, apart from the name Seti I, that sounds like it might be good. But basically, it's a great big temple it's the most holy place in the world in a way, but it's all dedicated to the god Osiris. And they said, you study that just from the pictures and the temple and doing that, and you'll learn everything you need to know about the god Seth. And it's true. So that was an important step. That was a while back. You know, what I don't know. I can tell you what happened then, if you like. But yes. you want another? Do you want to take me in another direction first?
No, this story and the journey that
journey. You want more of the journey?
Here.
Yeah, we love it.
Well, the journey, the first thing you learn about. I've got pictures for this and everything like that, but maybe I should just tell you. Obviously, the first thing, there's this amazing place in the middle of Egypt, Abydos, which is in the ancient world was the most sacred place in the ancient world, really. And it was a major center of pilgrimage. And right in the middle of it, one of the most famous things is the Temple of Seti I, who's very famous king or pharaoh in Egypt. But you can tell from his name that his family were followers or devotees of the god Set, because his name means he of Set. So even at a time in Egypt when they're supposed to be not into Set and everything like that, you can't avoid it. There's this whole bunch of kings who are really into it, and they but they know it's not. They have to kind of cater for everything else. But anyway, he builds this weird temple, or he commissions it. He commissions his what's called his mortuary temple, which is kind of. I'm one of the things I'm quite interested in the use of temples and stuff like that, and all sorts of mysteries, because Egyptians one of the ways the Egyptians taught people magic and the mysteries is via the temple itself. I don't mean just sitting in the temple being taught. There's something about the structure itself. And the major thing that happens in the Temple of Seti I is that Osiris gets killed there. Or certainly he is decapitated there. And his bodiless head, just the head, is, according to the legend, is buried in the middle of Abydos. So in one stroke, really, you've got, so the fetish, the major fetish of Abydos is the head of Osiris. And of course, as we know, the person who chopped that head off is the god Set. And so awful lot of the mysteries of Set and the character of Set is manifest there, right? One way or another. It really reveals it. And one of the things about Set is that he knows everybody else's secret, right? He knows everything. He knows what, and one of the greatest secrets of the ancient world is what happened in this temple in Abydos. That's the great secret that magicians all through the generations have all wanted to know, because it's one of the best kept secrets in antiquity, really, what happened there, because they're secret things. They find all this archaeology, all these underground chambers, all these tunnels, like they say the tunnels are Set and all that sort of, it's all there. What was it that when they went off into the desert and they do their secret rites, which are all connected with Set and Osiris, what do they do? And one of the things you know is that Set, he knows. And not only does he know, but he's saying, well, it's in a way, I'm going to tell everybody, if you don't behave, if you like, or whatever. He's always threatening to say, or it's not he's threatening, he does it all the time. He says, this is what it is really about. This is the mystery. This is what they really do there. So if you like, the mysteries, what I discovered was that I'm not the only person who's discovered this. Everybody finds this in the end. This is a central piece of, a central journey, I think, for all Setians. I think I wouldn't be the first. I think Don Webb has thought about this, and Michael Aquino, all sorts of people, Joan Lansbury, that you have to explore this mystery, that encoded, it's almost like in reverse. By reversing some of the things that take place at Abydos, you learn the real nature of the god, because it's a temple to Osiris, but the god Set is very, very much connected with the place. So eventually, I think that's a step that all Setians take. They think about that place. Sometimes they're lucky enough to actually go there, even though it's a bit of a ruin now, but there's still quite a lot there. But it's worth doing because you spot certain things. But in their head, they travel to this place and they learn the secret of, or they make this direct contact with Set and this mysterious. If you think about all the different ramifications, just of the fact of the severed head, right? The cult of the Set. If you think about the implications, how potent a symbol that is all over the world, the cult of the severed head. It comes up everywhere. And it is certainly there. So, like, for instance, in Crowley, so you go back to Crowley again, well, the central ritual of Crowley was this ritual Liber Samech, in which you invoke your holy guardian angel. And there's a distinct possibility that the ritual he uses, which is an Egyptian ritual, it's got a connection with this place Abydos for a start. It comes from there, probably, the Bornless One ritual. Really, we call it the Bornless One ritual in the Crowley tradition, but its real name is the Headless One. So it's the opposite. So you've got the head, you've got the headless one. There's the other bit of the mystery is the mystery of the headless demon. And again, a headless demon can be, in some sense, another name for Seth. So that was, I mean, that was about 25 years ago, I think, that I kind of got to that point. So it was a very good tip from this person. He was quite a demonic, really, this person, I think, in the end. He did all sorts of crazy things, but sometimes the demonic initiator, maybe with setting stuff, you have to have a demonic initiator. You've got to keep your wits about you with this stuff, because there's a lot of crazy people, and I had to keep my wits about it with him as well. But it was a very good lead, it really did open you. And I think in one of the books, in the Tankem book, see Tankem, Tantra and Mysteries of Chem, I think I give a version of the journey that you can do in your head, like a psychic. That was the other insight. That's the Sethian thing is, people do all this vision quest stuff, but it's better if you use a real building, in the sense of, even if it's you use a building that did exist once upon a time, even if it's on the astral now. Okay. So you visit a ruin or an archaeological site, or you look at it in a book, but you base your vision quest on an actual building, because that way you're receiving a message really from the building itself, which is one of the, again, amazing secrets of Egyptian magic, really, is the stuff that they encoded in their buildings. And they tell you this as well. They write it down. They say, the plan of this building is special. The secrets are in the way the building is made. If you just investigate it everybody can do that in their head. So yeah, that was stage 3, I suppose, by then.
Okay, I totally agree. There is this spark, not only a calling, but maybe for those who go on to choose this path specifically, Crowley and Seth and everything, a special spark, a different one, a more warlike, rebellious one.
There's a spark, and there's a sense of a calling. I mean, I guess there are other people get that with other deities and other mysteries, and not how I think it usually is. But there must be a reason why all of us are kind of doing what we're doing, and that's probably it, isn't it? Something is calling us, If it's the Sethian thing, I mean, some people you mentioned, because there's a kind of simple ritual that one of the revelations, right? It maybe seem obvious now, is the connection between, and it's going to be difficult for people in Brazil, but there's a connection between Seth and the constellation Ursa Major. That works very much in the northern hemisphere, but I think even Ursa Major does visit the southern hemisphere as well. And his mystery, the 7 stars, or the sevenfold mystery, is very connected with that. And so yeah, I was outside at night doing a bit of star watching, and yeah, I had this idea that, so if you've already got the calling, then you find the constellation that fits with that entity, and you draw it down. you look at it and you draw it down into yourself, and that's the kind of first basic. So you've already got the calling, but you're making it more manifest by drawing down the star, their particular star. So Crowley, 1 star in sight. Well, that's what he's getting at, really. I don't think he ever said that, but I think that's the obvious interpretation. When he says you're supposed to have 1 star in sight. I don't know if it says that in the Book of the Law, probably.
Yes, the Book of the Law.
Is that the Book of the Law? Okay. So essentially, take that literally. Go and find a star that fits with the mythology that you want to work with, and physically draw it down into yourself. It's easier with the plough or Ursa Major is one of the easiest ones. But say people, it's strange that it's the one that often people ignored for ages, because it's so common here. And you find it in India. It's funny, you do this in India as well. They work with the same constellation. They do it in China. But whatever, that's how I would do it if I'm into the setting thing. Just do this simple ritual of drawing down the star. Actually, you suggest that to some people, and they kind of say, "Well, I don't think I'm kind of ready for that." Because the other thing, the star is like a Big Dipper, isn't it? It's like a ladle, like a gourd.
Yes.
You know? So it's full of all this elixir, I suppose. So you're kind of drawing it, you're pouring it onto yourself and drawing it in. That would be a very tantric technique, I would have thought. It's a very, very Egyptian technique, as I discovered. This idea of drawing things into yourself. Particular deities, they install them all over their body and draw them into themselves, and that's a direct link between Tantra and the Egyptian way of looking at things. It's very, very physical form of magic, some of which it's just being unearthed, really. I mean, it's the other thing, because originally the people who first started in Crowley's day, in a way, all those experts that he worked with, they were a bit puritanical. I mean, he was good, right? Saying, "Oh, tell me the real stuff," and they didn't like to do that. And the Egyptians themselves, at the end of their civilization, they didn't like to. They were always. It's funny. It's like in India or whatever. They're always being kind of sent up by the Romans for being too sexual. They found it embarrassing in a way, right? That they'd say, kind of obsessed with the Egyptians. They're obsessed with sexuality and all the rest. So they kind of started, and then you got the Christians, of course, and they don't like it very much. So it all tends to get hidden. And then, so when the academics in the Victorian era are the same, they don't really want to talk about this stuff. But of course, the magicians, the Crowley people, that's what they want. This is the most interesting aspect of it, in a way.
And for these guys that do not like sex, Osiris and Isis, they are much more appealing. Because Osiris is like, he's a poor guy who got chopped up, and then Isis is the queen, and then he make an effort and everything like that. So in a Christian way, Osiris is much more easy to relate. And for us, I believe from the Crowley point of view, Seth is much better and much more appealing to us.
I think so. It's just you have to get over your, if all of these people have been telling for generation on generation that this is, this is not good, this is not the right stuff to be. This is the criticism. The main criticism of Seth is that he's too much into sex, drugs, and rock and roll. Basically, that's what he's patron of that, isn't he? He's into not just magic, but he's well into this. But so is Hathor as well. Incidentally, you'd have to say the whole of Egyptian culture is very into. They're very into sexuality, and they're very into alcohol, and they're very into having a party. But this is all stuff that had to be suppressed. at some point, because people think, how can you be serious about your religion and your path if you're into all this other stuff? You know, but then again, that's Crowley again. He would say, well, of course you can. It's the suppressing of all that stuff that is messing everybody up. As he would say, the word of sin is restriction. You've had 2,000 years of restriction, and this hasn't really made the world that much better a place. Whereas in the ancient world, the Egyptians were known as the best place to live, the most liberal society in the ancient world, the one with the best sort of place for women, you know, where the women's role was the strongest, and there were you know, much more things. And actually, when I discovered with the history as well, that if you look at, because that was the other weird stepping stone, is that eventually, you know, you look at where did the Setians live in Egypt? Because there are like a specific group of people in ancient Egypt who were the Setians, and they were there right from the beginning. They're like the indigenous people in a way, and this guy, he wandered into the desert and he discovered their ancient city, you know, just lost in the desert, and they excavated it, and you can learn a lot of magic from that. But the one thing about that, you think, well, Seth has this reputation of being a kind of quite macho, not macho, but violent. Yeah, he's very much to do with weaponry and the martial arts in Egypt, and so you think, oh, what would it be like living in this city? Would everybody be going around sort of picking fights with each other all the time? But actually, there aren't in the city. The relationship between men and women is very. It's much more equal than it is anywhere else in Egypt, anyway. And there aren't a lot of injuries and broken bones on the skeletons. So you would assume that life there was actually, I think that's the setting thing you used. They used violence in a rational way when it was called upon. He's the emanation of the god Ra, and his function is to use his strength and violence at certain moments when it's needed, not just for the sake of it. But when they're actually living together, it doesn't look worse there than anywhere else. It looks okay, really, as far as any ancient city is involved. So you get little, and there's a whole story about how when they discovered the city of Set, the ancient city of Set, the first excavators, they said there can't be Egyptians, really. There can't be ancient Egyptians. They must have come from somewhere else, because their mode of life and their rituals are so different to everybody else's. And they said that there must be some lost white race or something. You know, this is literally what they thought. They're the lost race of Egypt who kind of moved there and everything. And then someone said, but actually they are the Egyptian people. They're probably the original Egyptians. But they're into different things. They're into some kind of they're into some really, weird things, I suppose, from the point of view, but things that, an awful lot of things that are done in modern magic,
yes,
you can find the origins of it in amongst the city of Set and amongst other people as well. And that's a weird story. So we do that. I think the Setians do this weird thing. This is part inspiration. We get told all this stuff, but we also get told to go and look look at these weird things and say, God, that's not what it's surprising. It really does surprise people what they find. So yeah, that was another milestone, I suppose you would say.
Well, all that being said, now, since Seth is a god of rebellion, free thinking, does it make sense to worship him, and how so?
If he's the god of rebellion, well, yeah, because we want. It's a complicated issue that because both. Yeah, I mean, I suppose in a way, but people say it's the age of Horus and everything like that, and Horus is much more, in a way, much more orthodox, whereas Seth is more anarchic in some ways. Horus is about, more like kingship and that, although Seth has a role in that as well. But yeah, I think that's right. He's definitely. There's been this issue about, there was an attempt to sort of associate it with the far right politics, and the far right stuff. I mean, Seth is just, that doesn't fit with Seth at all, really. That's not part of his thing. It's much more of a sort of, if you're going to have a political side to it, it's going to be more egalitarian in a way. I would have thought. You see, that's the weird thing. If you go back far enough, the setting idea is more like pluralistic. So, and again, so we tend to think that having one person in control, one kind of great person, is sort of better in a way. But the Setians would have thought it's better to have two people in control. It's better to have which people think they'd say that's evil, right? The kind of not having that focus. One point, it's supposed to be one-pointedness. Whereas the idea of duality and plurality, which is all about Seth's point of view. Now, for me, that seems pretty revolutionary in the sense of, I say, the revolution or being unconventional change is about seeing the other point of view, whereas the people who, the right wing is more, it's one view, really. So yeah, he's definitely an icon of revolution and of sexual revolution, and all the rest. I definitely see it that way myself.
Would you say this is the first possible link between Egyptian magic and Tantra? This duality, or maybe this opening up of authority?
Yeah, I think so. There's sort of an idea in Tantra of kind of deconditioning yourself, really, of getting away. An important part of Tantra is the Tantric kind of claims to know everybody else's secrets. In a sense of like we probably think this way, right, as magicians, that Christian people and everything like that, and you think we sort of know what you're getting at, or we know why you think that way. We think maybe you're a bit misguided, and you don't see the whole picture. You don't see the other side of the equation, and that would be a tantric point of view, that they have these Brahmanical people and all the rest of these Orthodox religions. And the tantric understands all that and sort of respects it to some extent, but thinks, no, it's just another form of conditioning. It's all conditioning, and you need to stop playing these roles and break out of these roles and get rid of your conditioning. And then maybe you'll find out what you really are. That's a very tantric thing, and this is why the tantrics practice all these sort of things that break rules. They're breaking rules all the time, and Seth is very much into breaking rules, because he can't see the point of them. He knows it's bullshit. I mean, on a sort of silly level, say the story about Horus's paternity, right? So Osiris, as we know, is killed by Seth, but somehow or other, Isis manages to conceive a child after his death. And everybody seems to accept this, but it's almost like the sort of common person say, well, it's obvious that, you're not really Osiris's son, right? Because you can't be, he was dead. You say, no, you can't say that. That's evil. It's evil to say things like that. So all the time, but it's like common sense. I think it's part of the dynamic within the system of trying to say how things really are, and understanding why people have these rules and that they maybe have to be abided by, but maybe they're not quite as necessary as people make out. I mean, as we said, that Seth, he still upholds. He's not a complete. You see, he's got this opposite figure, this entity, Apophis, who is, which you may have heard of. Have you come across Apophis or Pep? Some people think he is Seth. They're kind of, but it's difficult to say. It's you have to work this. This is a mystery you have to work out for yourself. Whether Seth and Apophis are themselves. I think all Sethians have to work that out for themselves. Because there's definitely this relationship between them of Seth having to kind of put him in his place. Seth has this power. Why is it that Seth, when everybody else is hypnotized, right, by everything, and Seth is the only one who can see through the illusion, right? You can't put the evil eye on Seth. You can put the evil eye on anybody else, and he says, "Well, it doesn't affect me," and that's his role. Because you could look at it the other way. He sees through illusion. You can't get one over on him. He's got this power. So one of the things he's able to do is to look at Apophis, this very, very dark personification of evil, really, for want of a better word. He is the only one who can really look at it. And I suppose that's another Sethian idea, that you should look. Have you got the courage or whatever to do it? I mean, I'm not saying you should do it tomorrow. But I think it's the sort of thing Sethians think about. You're supposed to, from the Orthodox point of view, they're always saying, "Oh, don't do that," or don't look away, you shouldn't see this. Whereas the Tantrics and the Sethians are the same. They say you should look. You should know everything, really. You should at least try. And Seth gives you the power to do that. And I see it's very, very parallel to the way the Tantrics operate. They don't believe in all these taboos. They can see why it might be powerful or whatever, but they say that you should decondition. So yeah, they're completely, I think they're parallel. I'm not saying they're the same entity, but there's something there, really. I mean, if you look at one of the central entities of Tantra, which is Shiva, he's the same thing. He's outside of everything, isn't he, really? As it causes all that. He doesn't get invited to the party, and he kind of starts a fight. Sort of bashes everybody up and ruins the whole thing, because basically that's very like the Sethian thing. I reckon it's the same, but it's not. I'm not saying it's the same entity, but maybe that psychological thing has to be represented in every culture. And Seth definitely. I mean, say we were still at the point where everybody's learning about this. It's been 20, 25 years, or no, since the 1970s that people really started looking at this. And the magical movement is. See, originally I used to organize this conference, and we used to have the people from the Temple of Seth used to come along. We thought we better invite them along, but everybody didn't really. I think they were a bit disrespectful in a way. They thought, "Oh, well, it's all silly and all this sort of stuff." But things have changed. I think they've changed, and I think everybody's got to realize this is quite an important mystery for people who are in. It's significant, I think. So, and now so many thousands of people kind of are being called to this. I think the things that people are learning are amazing. So yeah, I look forward to that.
I have another question about another important character, that is Thoth. And since you said that Isis and Osiris, and they had the help of Thoth to bring Horus back, what do you think that the relationship between Thoth and Seth? Because they are both magician gods. And today we have the paths of thought and the tunnels of Seth. And were they enemies? Were they different aspects of the same energy, the magic energy? What do you think are the relationship between thought and Seth?
Well, look, I don't think any of them are enemies. There's only one enemy, which is Apophis, really. What would define an enemy within the tradition is is this whether you uphold Mart, or the principle of Mart, and even Seth upholds that in his own way. So everybody has this vision of, that whatever you do, it's part of some cosmic balance or pattern. So I don't, there's also some reason why it gets cast as a sort of enemy, but it's something that was rather surprising that I wrote in the book was in one of the books I've not, the Seth is that Thoth is actually the offspring of Seth in some way. Because there's this famous episode, the homosexual episode or the gay episode, if you like, with the various versions of where there's a sexual battle, if you like, or war of the sexes between Horus and Seth, who originally were they're certain sort of lovers, and sometimes it's kind of hostile, and sometimes it's quite loving, really, in some way. But anyway, because of all sorts of technical things that happen, right? Which again, it's taken me a while to go into it, but the mysteries of sexual magic are all there, right? The science of sexual magic is all encoded in the relationship between Thoth, Horus, and Seth, and the fact that they have this sexual connection, one way or another, and they give birth to a magical child. And the same sort of thing happens within Tantra, within the Tantric tradition. The same thing happens within the magical tradition, the creation of the magical child. And essentially, Thoth is the magical child of Horus and Seth, which is surprising, kind of interesting as well. And the techniques that they use, if you go into it, if you look at the different accounts, because I won't go into too much detail now, all the kind of stuff, all the secrets of sexual magic are there. They're all encoded in it. And strangely enough, the way these things work is that, again, this relationship between Aleister Crowley and Victor Neuburg when they were lovers, and they kind of created a magical child as well between them. I should say, it just happens there were two men. It could have been two women, kind of, or whatever, because those sort of things also exist within the magical tradition and Egyptian tradition. It's just that's the one we know. So I think, yeah, obviously Horus, Thoth has to kind of do all sorts of other things. But if you think about it, the Thoth, often people confuse the image of Thoth and Seth because it looks sort of similar. And they're both connected with the moon and lunar mysteries and bodily fluids and potions, all the rest is all connected in that, which is the most interesting aspect of the mystery. Obviously, on top of this, you've got this kind of power struggle, this political propaganda thing happening in Egypt over thousands of years, where they've kind of got another story where the myths have to be rewritten to back up a particular political project, which is to do with the monarchy. And so sometimes things are a bit contradictory, I think. So but also interesting. But I think that's the most interesting aspect of their connection, I think, is that Thoth and Seth are related to each other. He's his magical child. But sometimes that's the way it is. The magical child kind of ends up not really liking their parents very much or having to control them. Well, it's often the case. The child says, oh, you look at your parents and you think, oh, well, I could have done a better job of it than you did. Or you missed this trick or whatever. But yeah, no, that's the bit I like. That answers your question.
I have one.
Yeah.
Do you agree with Kenneth that Seth is the primordial god form of what we call now Satan?
God, I don't know really. There's some sort of connection, isn't there? But some Setians really hate that idea. I don't know. I'm kind of, it's something I'm working on at the moment is to do with the origin of demons within the biblical tradition, the Nephilim, and the story of the Nephilim and all that sort of stuff. That definitely comes from Egypt, which is kind of a weird discovery, really. So I think the Satan thing, it depends on the sense that it probably it got us there, and it opened the way. But in the end, I think the setting stuff is. See, why would it? The Satan. See, there's Satan as this sort of global entity, one single entity personification of evil. But within the tradition itself, there are lots of different Satans. Really, it means a kind of, as people have said, some sort of opposer, and that idea of a trickster figure, Satan as a trickster figure, as someone who tests you out, the demonic initiator. If you take that interpretation of Satan, then yeah, Seth has that role, I think, as well, probably. But I think people are moving away from that in some ways. But I don't know. Didn't Don Webb think he's found this sort of phrase, the Egyptian phrase that says "Hail Satan" in hieroglyphic? I should have looked that up. So he may know something different, but I tend to look at them as different. But like a lot of people, I have to say, when I was a teenager, I kind of got into I was into all the Satan stuff as well, because you sort of but in a way it's a kind of death wish, I reckon. Because you're going through this sort of angst period and you think, oh, I just don't fucking care anymore. So everybody says this is where I'm the cry. Everybody says you're evil or whatever, so you may, or satanic, you may as well get into it then, But in the end, I think when I first got into the setting thing, I was sort of slightly worried about that, that it might be what people said it was going to be like. It was going to be very, very antisocial, and it's going to be just destructive, because it's difficult to see when you know the image of Satan why you would want to get into that. It doesn't have any positive aspects to it that you can think of. But I say I don't know too much. But I say in the end, the people who were into the Church of Satan, they kind of graduated, didn't they? They found a real thing, I reckon, and founded the Temple of Seth. So I don't know, respect, I suppose. I don't know if in terms of the iconography, see, the iconography of Satan is the horned god. Seth can be a horned god as well, but it's closer to this image of Baphomet, isn't it? Of the goat of Mendes, who's the god Amun and whatever. So I think it's probably a little bit too mixed up, and it's probably more of there's the Christian view of the demonic, and which is very, very distinctive. It's very different to almost everybody else on the planet. Where even in the Middle East or wherever, they have Satans and all the rest. They don't necessarily want to have anything to do with it, but they have a different approach to it. It's not completely negative, or it can be useful sometimes. So I don't know. This is an answer. I've never been I think I would have called myself a Satanist for a very brief period of time when I was a teenager, but I was never in the Church of Satan. But there's quite a lot of those people seem quite sensible. But no, I'll stick to Seth, I think.
It's the problem we have with when something is too culturally dominant. We lost the difference between the term itself and the character. That's, I think, what happened with Satan. Like, we don't see it as the adversary anymore. It's a specific one, the demon from the Bible. So then trying to use this word brings a lot of lexical problems that maybe it's just better not to deal with, like, life's too short.
Yeah, I agree with that, really. It's the Christian thing. Probably.
Sorry, Marcelo.
But the idea of the opposer, that is kind of interesting. And obviously there's a connection historically there's some sort of connection between early Judaism and obviously they think they came out of Egypt. They're supposed to be worshippers of Seth at some point in their distant history. I mean, there are always stories like this appearing in Israeli newspapers and stuff about Baal and Seth and and Yahweh and all the rest. So probably mixed up in there. There is something about that. Because famously the followers of Seth, the Hyksos, were driven out of Egypt and moved into the land of Canaan. So somewhere in some of those archetypes, in terms of the actual way they look, in terms of how they're depicted, I think there's something that, and the wife of Yahweh is supposed to be Astarte or Ashtoreth. And she's also the wife of Seth. So in the Egyptian tradition, so it's a long time ago, and some of these things got mixed up. I mean, even when they talk about Baal or whatever within their tradition, he doesn't actually he looks like Seth, but his behavior is much more benign and more like Osiris. So it's just difficult to say, really. I'm sure we're going to find out.
Yeah. I have another question about the tarot cards that have an interested, and I know that you have made a 30-card oracle deck, the Desert Fox Oracle. I remember that. Can you tell us about it?
About the Desert Fox?
Yes.
Well, put it this way. You see, the other thing about Seth is lunar. He's a stellar. It's to do with certain constellations, but in his oldest form, he's got a connection with the moon. And Setian calendar, the oldest form of the calendar in Egypt would be a lunar calendar, which is common enough. And it's funny, when I first even though pagans and magicians are supposed to be very into the moon and stuff, they weren't making too much of it, really. There's this guy Yates, he kind of had an idea for a lunar tarot back in the Golden Dawn days, but nobody had done a lot with it. And I thought that there's all sorts of reasons why you should use the Egyptian lunar cycle as a series of oracles, really, as an oracle deck. I didn't want to make another tarot deck, really. I thought it'd be good to make a sort of oracle deck using Egyptian archetypes, and Seth is in there, and because it follows a lunar cycle, it's a homage, really, to Seth, who is the ultimate part of the work, if you like. The Sethian work was to kind of bring out the lunar aspects of the Egyptian mysteries. So that was one of the spin-offs of it, because I think it had been forgotten. I mean, the Egyptians themselves had forgotten it. They moved away from their lunar calendar at some point in their ancient history. And when you move away from the lunar calendar and the mysteries of the moon, you, in a way, you divorce yourself from nature and from the real things that happen in the world, because the moon is a natural cycle. And that's the other thing about Seth. Seth is very natural in some ways. It's a very natural point of view, and so that's why I did the Desert Fox, and it's the first part of that program. There's some more to come, really, because I've done quite a lot of work on, because Seth has 72 companions is the other thing, the companion.
Yes.
And traditionally, sometimes in the Sethian books, you'll see them mention the companions or the confederates or whatever. And this is, I mean, there's just his gang of people, you know, who hang out with him. But there's obviously more to it than that, right? Because when you look into who the companions are, it gives you this whole natural cycle of the stars and the moon and whatever, and these cosmic tides that are working, which is a very Sethian mystery, one way or another. You keep finding, you don't really expect to find it, and there's a connection with the tantric side of it as well as the tantric Sethian thing as well, because the mysteries of the moon. That the hidden moon, that's quintessential, that's tantra, you know, that's a very, very important mystery within the tantric tradition of the cycles of the moon and the different substances and things that are produced. So Kenneth Grant in his Typhonian group, he's kind of, he never really tells you enough information to know how to do anything with this stuff, but he does open these very interesting doors, point you at this really, oh, that's kind of interesting stuff, but he doesn't give you he doesn't quite know enough about it to tell you. But everybody loves this idea of the kalas, which are the particular cycles of the moon, and there are 30 of them in a sequence. Well, you know, you're going to find you've got that's a central mystery of Tantra. It's also a central mystery, a secret really, or a lost piece of information about the mysteries of Seth, that it works with this 30-day lunar cycle and a longer lunar cycle. Anyway, so the Desert Fox Oracle has 30 cards, one for each day of the lunar cycle, but it's an oracle deck. It was, you know, like with anything, you sort of it takes on a life of its own, but I've got, there's definitely some more work to do for that. But yeah, I'm glad you noticed that. Desert Fox, that's Seth, isn't it?
Yes.
According to Kenneth Grant, it's funny, you see the Desert Foxes, they're quite kind of sweet little things, really. But but yeah, the fox, the living in the desert, that's one of the important archetypes of Seth, really. So one way or another, I've kind of been, so these mysteries are being revealed. But yeah, I think the two things really do fit together. I'm always finding, sort of stuff within the tantra, because that was the other thing I got into at an early stage, was this. It was in the Typhonian thing was, Kenneth Grant talks a lot about. He mixes the two together. I mean, that's was his great discovery in a way, is to connect the Sethian tradition, the Typhonian tradition, with the tantric tradition. He doesn't tell you how they connect, but he kind of worked out that they probably do in some way. But it's been left to all of us to work out the details, really. And there are very few books that kind of that really tell you that. I mean, I think in a way you've got to kind of just repeat the experiments, do the experiments. But in a sense, that was, I think a lot of people who were in the Typhonian, they kind of said, well, we want, you talk about this initiation into the Typhonian tantric tradition. Can you give us, can we have it then? Give us the initiation. And he said he couldn't really do it. He didn't have so people, and then there was a coincidence that someone wrote from India and they said they liked all the Typhonians as well. Can we make some sort of arrangement with each other? So we kind of made this link with the tantric tradition as well as an initiated tradition. I mean, it's weird how these kind of patterns go round and round, because the tantric tradition itself has these back, if you go take it back far enough, you'll find it's got this connection to Egypt, that the first tantric of our particular sect probably did sort of travel around. He was some sort of mariner or whatever. It is thousands of years ago.
Yeah.
Anyway, but that got me into trouble in the end, you know, with one way or another, with the Typhonian, because, you know, you end up being part of another organization. But yeah, no, these are incredibly interesting mysteries. We've done quite, you know, there's quite a lot in the book, but there's some great stuff about to come out from people who've been really trying to get to the bottom of it, research this and take the mystery forward. But I can't really tell you too much about that yet. Soon though.
Jesse?
Oh, we've been talking, is it really 7:15? We've been talking for a little while, don't you think? Might need a drink soon.
Yeah. Mogg, in your view, what is the role of Seth in the Thelemic reinterpretation of the Egyptian gods?
Well, as I say, it's not really. He's there in the Thelemic stuff as some sort of hidden god, isn't he? That's the thing. He's not. I suppose what you would say is that you've got within the Book of the Law, it's pointing towards, as we just said, towards the lunar mysteries, right? Khonsu, Ankh-Afna Khonsu, the mystery of Khonsu. You know, if Crowley had kind of stayed a bit longer in Egypt and actually gone, because the stellar revealing has it belonged to a real person, right? A priest of the cult of Khonsu, the moon god in Egypt. And you can actually, you can go and, you know, the joke is you actually even know what his shoe size is, right? The joke is we know everything about Khonsu, right? Who wrote the Stele of Divinity. We even know what size feet he had. And they say, no, but you do. Because he was a priest at the Temple of the Moon of Khonsu in Luxor, and they spent so much time on the roof that they used to make outlines of their feet and put their initials on them on the roof of the Temple of Khonsu, and his Ankh-Afna Khonsu's footprint is on top of the roof. But Crowley never discovered that. But Khonsu, the moon god, is very like Seth, really, in lots of ways. And he's got this sort of dual nature. So I kind of used him on the front of the book. But yeah, I mean, I think it needs. I think even in Crowley, he's saying that it's a double current, isn't it? It's really Horus and Seth, right? It's the current of the Book of the Law. It isn't just one thing. I think he says that in some of the holy books. I can't remember which one now. So if you're going to stick with that version of revised Egyptian stuff, which has a lot going for it, it does need a certain amount of explanation and rewriting, I think. It needs the Setian stuff. The Setian stuff is what makes sense of all that Book of the Law stuff, to be honest, I think. So that would be my contribution to it, and that's how they fit together.
My mind is blowing.
It is. You got your work cut out now.
Oh yeah.
I'm sure you're going to do things. No, what the people are doing now, the people who've got into this, there's plenty of work to do. Discuss, investigating the mystery. As I say, the stuff that's hinted at in Kenneth Grant or whatever, it's got to be. You've got to go and kind of work out how to do it. And whether it's true or not, right? I mean, that's the other thing, whether there really are 30 different elixirs or whatever you want to call them, and all these different things. So, yeah, that's the next step now, is people to work the system and get back to the cycle, this cycle of not just of the month, but of the year, and of the kind of ebb and flow of all the different deities. Because the Setians, normally you don't work, pagans or whatever, they don't like to be into one thing. See, Seti the First, which I kind of introduced you to at the beginning, when he did come to build a temple, he didn't build it just to Set. He built it to a
whole bunch of
a collection,
gods.
7 deities, yeah, and maybe others. So you need this cycle, a family. You need a family of deities. So you have, it's more like you have the Setian family or Ennead, if you like, and they have a cycle, which is like throughout the year, and that's kind of what I do. That sort of, so it's that kind of work really. Is that makes, that's one of the essences of magic that puts you back in touch with God. There's quite a lot to do there really. I forget really. I don't know if I'll even finish it. It's going to be up to everybody else to finish this off. But the work on the Kalas and the connection between Tantra and the Setian mysteries, that's a great growth area. I think that's an amazing tradition.
You said elixirs, and then I have kind of an alchemical question. So, does the city dedicated to Nubt Ombos, I hope my pronunciation is not that terrible, mean city of gold? And one of the epithets is Lord of Gold. So, is there any relationship between Set and the metal gold, other than a sense of prosperity? Like, is there any kind of hidden meaning, alchemical thing?
Well, this one, yeah, absolutely. Well, because alchemy and gold and everything, that was kind of discovered there, but in Egypt, and what that means exactly is tricky. But certainly the Set's name, one of his names, of Nupti, or Ombos, Set the Ombos, the Ombai, it kind of means the golden one. And it's interesting that there's if you pair him with an unexpected pairing with the goddess Hathor, Hathor's name is also the golden one. And Hathor is probably one of the most interesting goddesses within the Egyptian tradition. She is very, very like, the idea of Babylon, and of Kali, well, all these interesting goddesses that people, and her name, so it's funny, they're both, I joke sex, drugs, and rock and roll, but that's their kind of thing, really. So both Set and Hathor are the patronesses or patrons, whatever, of sexuality, of pleasure, of all sorts, of music, of potions. Obviously, they've got this kind of violent side and everything, but and there's this connection with gold. And the position of their shrines and cities is probably connected with the ancient desert routes because the Egyptians kept secret where all the gold was. They're obviously mining it somewhere, probably. That's what people thought they were making it, because there's so much of the stuff. But I think they just kept it secret, and the secret of where it is connected with the mysteries of Hathor and of Set. And obviously Hathor and Set, they're kind of usually thought of as enemies of each other. But maybe that's, yeah, I mean, because she's supposed to be the, I don't know, more on the, she's changed sides. A lot of the goddesses have sort of changed sides, they've fallen out or whatever. But maybe at some primitive side, because they were actually connected. They're a kind of estranged, they're a former couple. They'd make the best linkage, best connection, I think. The best couple is Hathor and Set, because they're so much into the same thing. And, when I say part, because the notion of becoming intoxicated, as it says in the Book of the Law, is the other thing, becoming intoxicated, to worship me, take wine and whatever it is, strange drugs, of which I shall tell you. And that's these are very Sethian mysteries. They're also very Hathor mysteries, but certainly Seth and Hathor are very connected with alcohol and primarily, which was for the Egyptians a very big way of getting out close to God, close to the divine, is to get, basically one way or another, is to get completely intoxicated on these drugs. And there's a certain amount of possibility that Seth's emblematic plant, blue lily, which represents Seth, that's got some psychoactive principles. These are all kind of things that people are investigating, but they haven't quite worked out yet, one way or another. So yeah, the gold is there. So it's actual physical gold. I was explaining to a friend the other day that one of the things they found in the ancient city of Seth were measures for gold. So there's obviously gold industry there. But I think also the psychological or metaphorical aspect of gold is important to their cult, one way or another. So yeah, definitely that's their mystery. I think so. Expensive.
Mogg, we are almost getting to the end of the interview.
Yeah, we better.
I have to ask you the most important questions of all is, how can we find your books? And if you have any lectures or courses and your websites, how can we find you and how can we find your books?
Well, I've got some kind of clunky lectures. I've got about half a dozen lectures on YouTube, which you can check out. On the Typhonian tradition and on Egyptian magic and on Tantra. Probably, sound is so there'll be some more of those. And the books, you should be able to get them on Amazon or something. I've got a whole pile of them now over the years. So I'm probably not going to show you now, am I? But even the latest one, which is Egyptian magic, you see, which is an image of Khonsu on the front, which I really like, looking both ways and looking quite, so it's got two natures like Seth, really. It's very like Seth, I think. Even this is more general magic. It's full of Sethian stuff, really. It's got most of the Sethian rituals in it. So if you want to, you don't want to be too much, if you want to sort of generalize it a bit, but you can't really avoid it.
This
otherwise,
book is available on Kindle Unlimited.
I think that should be on Amazon and should be on email as well, on Kindle. Tankem is, the first one is on, yeah, there you go, you got it. The Demonic Calendar, which is again lunar mystery stuff. And this is the companions of Seth, really. The Demonic Calendar is basically based around the companions of Seth. As I say, there's 72 of them. There's a reason why you can fit that into a lunar cycle. Right. And this uses the Egyptian one, but yeah, obviously in the decans and everything. That would do, I think. There's a set two ways is much more directly. That's not on ebook yet, I don't think, but I've been asked to hurry it along, get it available.
Well, that's great. I'll get all the links, and for you that are watching this,
yeah.
They will be here on the description of the video.
Yeah, go for it.
They are asking. I have to ask you a last question that we are asking to all our guests.
The last question. Go on.
The last question is this. There is no correct answer to that. Is, in your personal opinion, and based on what you study and what you believe, what do you think happens to us after we die?
After we die?
Yeah, I've been asking this question to like 300 people. It's like a game, and we will discover who's right after we die. So,
well, Crowley says you've got to bury me in a nameless grave. So I don't know. Well, what's funny enough, what I'm doing at the moment is working my way through a thing called the Amduat. Right, so wherever happens, if you want to know what, it's all in a book called the Amduat, right, which is what is in the underworld. So basically, I think there's probably, I go with that really, but you're supposed to do it now when you're alive. This is how all magicians in Egypt, or the adepts, this is what they practiced, is going through the underworld. So, yeah. Other than that, I don't know. It's but I think you should practice. you practice for it by working through the night journey. So basically, death is the night journey, and what happens will probably the more prepared you are for that probably, if you don't prepare, then probably nothing happens. If you prepare, then I think that you go through that. And I don't know. I suppose personally, I think there's a belief in Egypt that you come back, not physically, but you're reincarnated in some form, and that's the point of the reborn. You're reborn. So that would be the Egyptian point of view. You're going to be reborn. But having said that, the Sethians, they didn't mummify people, which is the other weird thing about them. In a way, they kind of thought just nothing happened. You just go back to the elements. So both views are possible. And sometimes the Sethians were a little bit practical. They say, no, bury me and do all this stuff, but let the body just go back into the desert and disappear. Well, as Crowley would put it, bury me in a nameless grave. So I don't know. I haven't decided yet.
Well, Mogg, it was really, really great to have you here on the show. Barbara, you have some last words?
Well, I don't know what to say. I'm wordless. Well, no, thank you very much. Today, you've given some very important keys to my personal work and my personal journey, because when I joined Ecclesia Babylon, and Tal Nahash is here, he's the founder of Ecclesia, my biggest desire was to connect with this lunar mystery, the physical, all the aspects of this part of the journey inside the Lima. And then now that I'm beginning to get into Tantra, like having this opportunity of listening to you was just incredible. And I have a lot to think. Oh my God, it's just too much right now. My brain's just processing. So thank you very, very much. It was a great honor to be here and to interview you. Thank you.
Jessica Puga, your last words.
Mogg, thank you very much for the interview. It was amazing. I love how all these entities, when you go back, they're all connected in some way. It's so nice to see how different people in the world, in the times, imagine this kind of energies. I love this variety and richness that we can have. Thank you very much for that. And people here on the chat are commenting that they liked it very much, and they're also asking you to come back to talk to us again when you can, because there's probably lots of things still for us to discuss. So thank you a lot.
Yeah, love to come back. But yeah.
So you are invited. You're our guest. You have friends here in Brazil, and we are looking forward to translate your books into Portuguese. That would be, I believe, a great thing. Well, again, thank you so much to be with us. You have any final words to the Brazilian audience?
Just, I usually sort of say, to me, the plague of the year shall not have you. So the blessing of Seth is be upon you.
Thank you so much. E para vocês que acompanharam a gente, então, muito obrigado. Deixa o sininho, segue o canal e a gente se vê no próximo Bate-Papo Mayhem.